Please, if I could have your attention. We're going to call this meeting to order for the Subcommittee for Regulated Industries and Utilities for Hemp. And today we're going to have one bill on the calendar. It's going to be Senate Bill 437. As we begin today, Chairman Robertson will be presenting his bill. I want to remind a lot of the folks that are here in the audience this is an important topic, and it has been discussed quite a bit over the last many years. That today, though, we're going to talk just about the merits of the bill. There are other bills that are floating around the General Assembly right now, which are all equally important. If the bill that you want to talk about is not here today, I'm going to ask you only to focus specifically on the content and the things surrounding this exact bill, just because we're going to run out of time, if that sounds reasonable to everybody. We do have two other members of the subcommittee. They are the Regulated Industries Chairman, which is Senator Cowsert, as well as Senator Harbison. I know they'll be coming shortly. The goal of the committee today is to listen to the bill's author, talk about any potential changes that there might be an interest in making, listen to some testimony from the public, and then we will report these findings back to Chairman Cowsert and the entire Regulated Industries Committee upon his full committee here later this afternoon. So that'll be the order of events today, and we're going to begin by a quick prayer if you bow your heads. Lord, thank you for today. Thank you for this opportunity to serve. Lord, we just ask you give us our ears to listen and just hear what you have to say and have it flow through each one of us as we do your work. In your most holy name we pray. Amen. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Chairman Robertson, if you would talk about Senate Bill 437.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the time of the subcommittee. I'm looking at Senate Bill 437, LC 550184. And I'll walk through the bill. And for those who are here, and I know the committee completely understands this, the areas I'm going to focus on are the underlined areas in the bill. If you'll notice on line 24, section 1, we talk about Title 16. Adding into that, what that does is that gives the ability of the commissioner and his post-certified officers to enforce violations of Georgia law that are contained in Title 16. Down on line 42, we define what consumable hemp products are. And for those not looking at the bill, it means a hemp product intended to be ingested, absorbed, or inhaled by humans or animals. If I can step on my soapbox really quick, Mr. Chairman, the reason we felt it was necessary to make these changes, as you know and other members of the committee know, since we passed legislation approximately 6 years ago dealing with oils intended for children, we, like many states that have tackled this process in the past, have created a three-headed monster. One of those heads is marijuana, the other one is cannabis, and the third one is hemp. And three things that should not be confused with each other tend to be confused with each other each and every day. And so what I'm hoping is that this bill will do better to make the market safer when it comes to the hemp product. On line 44, we talk about the contaminants, foreign substances that are being found in these hemp products. Right now, we're finding that a lot of hemp products are being brought into our state as a surplus from other states. I think up in the Northeast, they have been bringing their product into our state, and we're seeing it being sold and offered up for sale in convenience stores and other non-traditional marketing places. And so a lot of it's coming in with we don't know what in it, and it's being sold to our young people and adults, and sadly with some some bad outcomes. Line 54 talks about a full panel certificate of analysis, which means a report produced by a laboratory which is unaffiliated with the processor. So again, on line 54, we're talking about a full panel certificate of analysis, which means a report that would have to be produced by a laboratory which is unaffiliated with the processor and which has been accredited pursuant to the standards of the International Organization of Standardization for the competence, impartiality, and consistent operation of laboratories attesting to the composition of the product. And this is basically to make sure that we have an independent group that is testing these products, not associated with those who produce the product or sell the product whatsoever, in order to avoid any conflicts. And Mr. Chairman, I think, as we've discussed in the past, I would love for Georgia Laboratories to get the first bite at the apple at that particular testing. If we come down to line 96, we talk about a QR code, which means a quick response code that is a type of machine-readable, two-dimensional barcode that stores information about the product. Because what we're wanting to do is make sure that the Department of Agriculture will be able to go in there, look at these codes, and know exactly what the individual is trying to sell or what they're claiming they're trying to sell. If we move over to section 3, it says no consumable hemp product shall be sold or otherwise distributed in this state unless the manufacturer has within the last 12 months contracted for a full panel certificate of analysis to be conducted on such product, and such analysis has been conducted and made available to the public. Such full panel certificate of analysis shall, at a minimum, attest to the presence and amount in such product's final packaging form of the following compounds. They're listed there, as you see, and we've heard in many other meetings. Line 120, any other compound that the department determines to be necessary to protect the health and safety of consumers. Line 122, attest that the product in its final package form does not contain any contaminants in excess of the maximum levels established by the department. In establishing such maximum levels, the department shall consider the American Herbal Pharmaceutical monographs of such other scientific resources that the department determines is accurate, reliable, and relevant. Any consumable hemp product sold or otherwise distributed in this state shall bear, and this is where the importance of inspections, because there's a lot of things being sold in our stores, I'm afraid, that are coming into the state unchecked. A sticker approved by the department warning potential consumers that such products contain THC, and a conspicuous label providing, label providing the information from the full panel certificate of analysis conducted on such product within the last 12 months pursuant to subsection A of this code section, or allowing a consumer to access such information using a QR code. The department shall randomly inspect and test consumable hemp products available for purchase at retail establishments to ensure compliance with this code section. Such investigations and testings shall be conducted in compliance with this chapter and with the rules and regulations promulgated by the department. In the event that an inspection or test of a consumable hemp product conducted by the department pursuant to subsection C of this code section reveals that such product does not bear the sticker required under subsection 1 of subsection B, or the label required under paragraph 2 of subsection B, or it has a delta 9 THC concentration that exceeds the federally defined THC level for hemp, or it contains one or more contaminants in excess of the maximum levels established by the department, has a composition that is materially different from what is shown on the full panel certificate of analysis conducted by such product within the past 12 months, pursuant to the subsection A of this code section, such product and all related consumable hemp product shall be disposed of in compliance with this chapter and with the rules and regulations established by the department. Line 154, the department may submit an amended plan to the Secretary of Agriculture of the United States if or when required by any amendment to this chapter, the rules and regulations established by the department pursuant to this chapter, or any federal law or regulation. I'm sorry? Yeah, and that's, there's a lot of cleanup language as we move forward, but something I also want to hit on that I think is extremely important is on line 182. We discussed that it would be unlawful for any individual under the age of 21 to knowingly purchase or sell any hemp products no one could purchase hemp products under the age of 21, and no one could sell hemp products to anyone under the age of 21 here in the state of Georgia. Again, I think this is probably the most simple piece of hemp legislation that I've seen come forward since we started delving into this quagmire of marijuana and cannabis since I've been here. But I realized to do this, we're going to have to solve these problems in small bites and address the problems that we're having right up front. And right up front, some of the problems we're having, and you can see over here on the table, this is what the Department of Agriculture has been to go around, and no pun intended or pun intended, harvest from convenience stores and other places right here in the Atlanta area. And a lot of this stuff is, under the hemp rules, is not legal under multiple testings and evaluations. But without solid legislation to back the department up, they're hamstrung into going out there. And to be clear, hemp is an agricultural product. And I fully feel that it is Commissioner Harper and his staff's job to go out there and police this industry that is still in its infant state. Now, during this process, I've had manufacturers, producers, and others come to my office and talk to me about the legislation. And as of today, not one of those individuals coming to my office has had any problems with this legislation because of the fact it's very clean and concise on what it's trying to do. And with that, I'll submit to any questions. I do have legal representation here that represents the Department of Agriculture for any concerns that you may have within the department.
Thank you, Senator. It's a great overview of the bill, and I want to thank you, the Commissioner and his office, and all those that have met with us prior to the subcommittee meeting today. And I want to reiterate the goal here is to capture information testimony. Then I will make a report back to Chairman Cowsert for the full committee later this afternoon on what our recommendations and our findings are through that. One of the things that we did talk about, I just want to mention briefly, is today is hemp as identified as 0.3 in the code. I have learned that there's some discussion at the federal level of changing that to 1%, which is a significant increase of 3x plus. So I want to find a way, I believe, to make a good recommendation to Chairman Cowsert and the full committee that be capped at 0.3 no matter what happens on the federal level. And I believe we discussed that. Is that not true, Senator?
That is true, Mr. Chairman. I think the federal government's lack of action has left every state in a precarious situation, and I think the only way we can address this is by codifying here in the state of Georgia that 0.3 is our ceiling.
And the next thing that we were concerned about is to make sure that all the labs that are going to be doing this testing and then certifying that product are labs that have not just met the certifications as outlined in the bill, but also we've looked at, because we don't want some out-of-state dispensary that also has a lab altogether because they're in a whole different state we can't keep our eye on, to not have some type of a seal approval. In this case, would come from the Agriculture Commissioner.
I agree with that also.
I think that's a fair recommendation as well. Okay, I've got a question from Senator Harbison.
Yeah, thank you very much, Senator. Thank you for bringing this legislation. Appreciate my colleague from Columbus. And I think you dealt with it, and I think the chairman here sort of was going along the same lines. But overall, the Fed still does not recognize the legality of any marijuana. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And number two, on line, I think you were on line 54, when you mentioned the detection of certain drugs, on line 113, I'll start there. You were saying if they found any in it, but as the chairman here was saying, 1.3 would not be illegal. It would be, you would discover whether or not it was legal based on that particular point of demarcation.
Yes, sir. The lab
right?
test would show if it exceeded that 0.3 amount.
Yeah, I meant 0.3.
Yes, sir. And at that time, the product would be seized, and the product would be, I guess, destroyed based on rules and regulations and practices established by the department.
And further, one final question, Mr. Chairman. The Agriculture Department would have the policing capabilities of carrying out this analysis, or Did I miss that?
They would have the primary of going around and checking on this. This would not prohibit any other law enforcement agency in the state of Georgia from assisting them or initiating an investigation. But what we hope is if you and I had a report in Columbus that somebody was in the market of selling illegal hemp, that our agencies would be able to partner up with the Department of Ag, since they would be the ones certifying the labs, and we would be able to do a joint law enforcement action to remove this thing from the community.
Before it's distributed, a lab would take care of that under the jurisdiction of
Yes,
Agriculture Department.
yes, sir, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
sir.
Thank you.
Chairman Cowser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the time and energy you've put into this on a short notice. We agreed it wasn't the sort of role of this subcommittee to produce a committee sub, but it certainly is to make recommendations as to how to improve your bill. I agree wholeheartedly with Chairman Albers that we want to limit this to 0.3% and not be subject to changes in the federal law. I believe that can be done at lines 52 and 3, where it specifies the Delta 9 THC concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. I think if you just delete the remainder of that sentence, you take out any reference to the federal code, because this said whichever was greater, so it allowed it to go up. Do you agree that that will do it? You've kind of probably spent a lot more time in this area than we have.
I believe if we could put Catherine on the microphone, Chairman, we had this discussion shortly before this meeting.
Chairman Cowser,
Yes.
you have the law degree and I do not. Do you think we would need to also strike at the beginning of the sentence where it says federally defined?
I've got one other option. Could we not just make it, rather than is greater, is less?
You could.
This way, if for some reason the feds ever changed it lower, then we would go lower.
Yeah. We'll work on that. As what I anticipate is that we'll have a full report to the big committee today, and depending on what people say here, Chairman, you'll kind of report the sentiments, pro and con, and the ideas, and we'll have time to prepare a committee sub before the Thursday meeting to make smart changes. If I could, one other question. I love the idea that you not be able to sell these products without the independent laboratory report from a quality laboratory, but I didn't see where there's a penalty for failing to do that. Do we make that a misdemeanor of some sort, or an offense on the part about selling to under 21, which is a vital part of your bill? We define the crime and we tell you what happens on a first offense, and a second offense is essentially a misdemeanor. But I never saw, what do you do to somebody that puts for sale in our state a product that doesn't, that violates all these rules or regulations?
That. I think part of the reason that it's different is because the language of selling for under 21 is written in a criminal code, and it's written in that voice. If we have products that are being sold that don't follow these guidelines, we pull them from the shelves.
Okay, you can't prosecute them for doing that.
At this time, no, but it would behoove anyone who's selling the product not to lose the batch that
Right.
they've put out there. So I think that there's significant reason for people to comply.
Okay. And one final question.
Certainly.
Who has the law enforcement authority to prosecute kids or people that sell to kids? Is it a DA, a sheriff's department, police
Yes, sir.
department, ag department?
Well, it would be the arresting agency at this point, and the ag would have the authority to do that, but it would not prohibit any post-certified law enforcement officer in the state of Georgia, whether they were a University of Georgia police officer to a Columbus police officer, from, if they find it, same thing we do with alcohol sales and others. If they find someone selling this product to underage citizens, then they make the case.
All right. Thank you.
I want to get back to what Chairman Cowser
And
brought
that's a
up, though,
misdemeanor, Chairman, currently.
for a moment. If someone is illegally selling product, certainly you can pull their stock, right, which might hurt financially. But in most areas where someone does something wrong in this state, we'll then have some type of a fine. Something happens up to the point of suspending their ability to sell. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and I don't want to muddy the water. We have thought through this, and we address it in a separate bill,
Okay, all right.
if that would suffice. Also, anyone that's selling with a COA that's inaccurate, they call it dry labbing, where they basically misrepresent what they're selling. I mean, you've got a lot of overlap with fraud at that point.
Okay, so I just want to make sure everybody who has a vested interest in this bill, what Ms. Catherine Russell said, is that if a product is sold and found to be out of compliance, not only they pull their stock, but they are working on a separate piece of legislation, not this one, to address any other fines or penalties that may go along with that.
Because
Mr. Requary.
under the current alcohol laws, a lot of times the clerk is charged the first time, and in some cases, the business owner the second time, and there are some jurisdictions that they will attempt to remove the business license for consistent bad behavior on selling alcohol to underage citizens.
All right, we're going to, another question?
Question of Mr.
Certainly.
Russell. Catherine, there's a ability for the ag department to test some of these products, inspect them, you know, to see if they are consistent with what their labeling says, you know, whether they don't have contaminants and what the percentage. How's the ag department going to do that? Do you have a lab? Are you established with the capabilities of doing this type of inspection?
So we would contract with third parties, similar to how we're operating now. Currently, we have a lab that we work with, where they send test samples for any hemp that's grown in the fields, and we would continue to follow that model.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're going to hear from a few folks here that have signed up. Quick logistics point. It's 2:33. We're going to be out of this room by a couple minutes before 3 because several people have committee meetings to go to. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people signed up. So that's going to be less than 3 minutes each. So I'd ask you to keep your comments brief and to the point. We'll start out with, I think that's Anna. Is that right? With Georgia Hemp Economic Revival Org, or am I pronouncing it wrong? Aviva. Well, that wasn't even close. I put my glasses back on.
A lot of people do that.
Oh, Scribbles. How could we forget?
He's just holding my notes for me today. Hi, everyone. Hi, Chairman and committee. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak today. I think the bill has great intentions, and you did a great job with it. Most people that I know that are selling hemp are already doing a lot of that, and that's probably why they haven't had an issue. I do have 4 opinions about it, 4 things that I'd like to share. When a product says really boldly contains legal THC, I'm concerned that it can be a target for some people to get arrested, since THC is generally illegal, which I actually prefer it don't be because of all this confusion. And I wonder if it should say legal THC or something, so they're not a target to get arrested for this the product that they have possibly sitting in their car that says contains legal THC. Does that make sense? The second thing I want to share is I absolutely support the language how it is, saying whatever the federal is, because I think it just keeps it less complicated. And from my experience, genetically, just from traveling around to different states and learning all kinds of different things, is that when you squeeze out the THC, other things get greater, and they're also psychedelic. And depending on your brain, if you have too much CBD, that actually could affect you, similar to THC. So I would just leave that alone and let it work itself out. The third thing concerning punishment is I don't remember if it was in this bill or another one, so excuse me, but requiring a license for retail stores, perhaps that can just be removed if they mess up. Removing the license might be a good punishment on top of removing the product. Maybe that's in there already, I don't know. The fourth thing I want to address is line 22, which I was kind of chewing on, like, what does this mean, giving the commissioner, the police, power? And the first thought that came to my mind was hearing from Commissioner Harper to see how he felt about that. I don't know if it was his idea or, I mean, I don't think y'all coerced him into it, but I want to make sure he's comfortable with that responsibility, because I know the ag commissioner is quite a time commitment as it is. And I want to make sure he has time to play his guitar, you know? So I wonder if he should appoint a cannabis commissioner, which I think would be a more positive thing anyway, rather than call him the police, which some people might resist, that kind of strong arming, is to just say, okay, now we have a cannabis commissioner, whether it's Commissioner Harper or someone he assigns, or even better yet, the people elect, perhaps. Because as I see coming down the pipeline, not just hemp fuel, hopefully, but I mean, with the medical cannabis possibly being in his hands with 196 last year, like, could this happen again where the cannabis commissioner would be wearing the 4 hats? I see 4, not 3. I see recreational, medical, hemp medical, and industrial hemp products, which we
Aviva,
haven't.
we're out of time
Okay.
now. I appreciate it. And,
Absolutely.
we'll make sure that we get an application over to Commissioner Harper from Mr. Scribbles there.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, Dave, come on down.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me. I'll be very short for everyone's time and respect everyone's time. So I oppose the bill specifically because I believe that cannabis should be legalized. I also disagree with the senator that cannabis, hemp, and marijuana are different plants. When a plant is planted at a certain time, it changes a chemical makeup in it where its THC level varies, and it would go from being called hemp to marijuana then. That's an agricultural misnomer that we've kind of been led to believe. I also would like to make a point about the 0.3 level of THC in hemp. What that does is that hurts our farmers who have any interest in growing cannabis, or hemp as we say, for fiber, because it takes too much of a risk that one of those products, even though it was intended for not to get anybody high at all, but to bring fiber back here, which is an ecological benefit we need in the state, and it prevents farmers from taking that risk because they're worried about that potential higher test level on the THC than the 0.3. So realistically, that's why many states are going to the 0.1, is because 0.1 isn't enough THC to get anybody high. So that's not smokable pot. That's a different thing. What that is, smokable pot is more around 25% THC. The 1% really just bans people from trying to grow this as a commodities crop, which would be hugely impact on the economy here, much larger even than the impact of the legalization when that happens, the tax revenue from that is. The third and final point that I'd like to make about this bill specifically, because I know I'm not here to talk about full legalization, is this bill talks about adding extra legislation, and specifically in line 22 about creating a police department underneath, or the agriculture department as a police mechanism. And I'm totally against any efforts that are going to create any more legislation that takes us away from that path of legalization. Because whether we agree or not, it is coming to the state, and all we're doing is preventing the medical benefits, we're preventing the agricultural benefits of a commodities crop, all in the pretense of saying we're going to protect a small group of people who don't want anybody to use this as a recreational drug. Even though through the current laws that we've passed, and I'll wrap it up right now, sir, the current laws that we passed have released more dangerous compounds through things like THCA, THC10, THCO, which are much more like morphine in their molecular structure than THC is. So please consider not passing any more legislation until we get sensible cannabis legislation that approves it for the state, for all the people.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Gregg, come on down. JB, you're going to be on deck.
Thank you, Senator Albers. Thank you to the committee for allowing me this time to speak before you. I want to also thank Senator Robertson so much for his very dedicated positions on this topic, and all the time he has taken to study this topic. Greatly, greatly appreciated, and I've been inspired by his words. Also want to thank Director Russell for the time we spent together meeting. That was very, very helpful for me. Do want to speak to some of what I feel are very serious, I don't know if I want to say flaws, but omissions perhaps is a better word in this bill, which could be very damaging. The Delta loophole created by the U.S. Farm Bill is not resolved in this bill. So what that means in practical terms, say you have 10 bottles of pickles, and you know that there's something harmful in the pickles that's hurting the consumer. But if you regulate only one of these bottles, one of these kinds of bottles, whether it's dill pickles or whatever, and let the other 9 be sold without regulation, the regulation of Delta 9, no matter how good it is essentially meaningless. This is a bottle of gummies that I purchased yesterday in, ironically, Woodstock, Georgia, where I live. And you can see, is it all right to show this label up front?
We're going to run out of time, Doc, so
Okay.
just,
It has THC, it has Delta 8, Delta 11, THC-A, THC-B, THC-X. So this bill would only cut out one of those THC isomers. So closing the Delta loophole is incredibly important. Also incredibly important is the weight per package. This has 3,000 milligrams of THC, I believe, in it. It's hard to read. It has a 40 count. It says 175 milligrams per gummy. It says eat half a gummy, wait 2 hours, see how you feel. So the weight is incredibly important. California, Colorado have said, 10 milligrams is a standardized dose. They put that on the package because they've learned that the user gets impaired after 10 milligrams. So the weight, it's like if, 1 beer is a low alcohol percentage, but if you drink 10 beers, you can get drunk. So the weight is incredibly important. If this
we're going to have to
bill did
wrap up here,
pass-
Doc.
Just one last 30
Yes.
seconds. If this bill did pass, it would mean de facto recreational marijuana legalization, and I don't think any of you want that as your legacy in Georgia.
Thank you. All right, JB, come on down, and on deck we'll have Mr. Edward Lindsay.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members, for the opportunity to speak here today. My name is J.D. McCormick, and I'm the president of the American Healthy Alternatives Association. We have worked on hemp legislation across the country and worked diligently with surrounding state legislatures, including Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, North and South Carolina, to help pass common sense hemp regulations. We support the sentiments in Senate Bill 437 and hope to work with the bill sponsors as it moves through the process on the tweaking of a few definitions to better match surrounding states. We do support its moving forward today to keep things on track during a short legislative session. Common sense regulation helps to invite capital investments and creates market stability for operators. The leadership of the Agriculture Commissioner on this issue has been fantastic, and we hope to continue to work with him to pass good legislation and eventually as the industry's regulator. This bill is a great first step in striking a balance between consumer protection and industry viability. Thank you, Senator Robertson, for bringing forward this good bill.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Edward, come on down, and we'll have Wesley on deck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I can do it in a lot less than 3 minutes. I'm Edward Lindsay, for the record, from the law firm Denton's, and we represent Botanical Sciences. And we are in support of this bill, and we thank the Commissioner and Senator Robertson for bringing it forward. We're also in support of what Senator Calzert is mentioning in terms of tightening it up. The only thing I will add is a little history. Several of us were in the General Assembly when we had to crack down on the pill mills. What happened is other states cracked down, and so all the bad guys came to Georgia until we did the same thing. That's what we're facing here in Georgia if we do not pass this legislation. So we thank the committee, and we will thank the Senate as well for taking up this measure.
Thank you, Edward, and a great reminder. I remember when we did that. All right, Wesley, come on down, and Chuck, you'll be batting cleanup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll try to be brief as well. I represent the Hemp Alliance. We represent mainly retail stores, but we have growers and work with our processors as well. We do support this bill and thank the senators that signed it for bringing it forward. Most of what's in here is was contained in House Bill 196 from last year. It was actually in separate bills, but all the hemp got combined with the medical cannabis bill. And we certainly think there needs to be a age limit. People in our organization do have product that's tested as required in here and has labeling that requires 21, and they do card. We found most of the products that are causing problems are these kind of products over here you see. So we're very much in favor of this. One quick comment on line 22, the Ag Commissioner already has enforcement powers under the existing law. Just Title 16 is added to that. So it's not to make the Ag Commissioner a policeman, but he's charged with going out and inspecting these products and making sure they're legal. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you for that clarification. I was going to say the same thing, that the commissioner already has governance over Title 4, Title 10, Title 26, and Title 43. This is simply adding 16 to that list. All right, last but not least, that was...
Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Yeah. Wesley, I'll get you back.
Mr. Scribbles was back.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chuck McMullen with MCO Group, thank you for taking the time to hear me, and I apologize for not bringing my puppet today. We represent a hemp wholesale and retail client, and we are in support of this legislation. Senator Robertson, thank you so much for your willingness to carry this, and I want to thank Commissioner Harper and the staff for working with us. You've done an excellent job, and we support this bill throughout the process. We might have a recommended tweak here or there too, but we'll certainly work with the appropriate staff and members of this committee to work on that. So thank you very much.
Before you leave, Chuck, what is your recommended update, change, or tweak?
I've got the definitional in nature, and we've got some draft language I just received that I'll forward along.
Okay.
It's nothing substantive. It's just minor tweaks.
I understand that. Knowing Chairman Cowsert's edict for us as a subcommittee to pull together the list of recommendations ahead of time, I'd recommend that before we have his full meeting at 4 o'clock, you get those over to me.
Yes, sir. I will do so.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that's everybody's time to speak. Senator Robertson, would you like to come down and close us out? Scribbles did not sign up. That's why you didn't get any time today. I went strictly by the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the subcommittee hearing. I want to thank you, and I want to thank Chairman Cowsert. Chairman Cowsert allowed me to sit in on the full Regulated Industries Committee last year when all these ideas were rolled up into one big convulsive ball, and certain groups tried to hijack certain portions of it, and I appreciate his stern stand then, as I do now. And to be clear, you're exactly right. We are not, there are post-certified law enforcement officers within the Ag Department already. We're not creating anything that's not already there. And while I oppose recreational marijuana, there's so much of this dealing with marijuana, cannabis, and hemp that this has been a tough carry. But I think if it's going to be here, we need to regulate it and protect the citizens from its negative impacts.
You've got a question from Chairman Cowsert.
I had a question, Mr. Whip, that's on line 42 of page 2. And you define consumable hemp products there.
Yes, sir.
So that was not previously defined under this Georgia Hemp Farming Act. I guess we didn't anticipate they were going to make gummies or whatever after hemp. They were telling us it was going to be a bunch of rope and clothing or something, you know. At the time, this is a new definition. Was that something that just we didn't anticipate back when we passed that Georgia Hemp Farming Act?
Two-part answer to that is, I spoke from the well when we did the cannabis oil and said that this is what was going to happen because of what happened in Colorado, what happened in Washington State and California. So there just needed to be a clear definition of what consumable hemp products were.
Right now, there's none at all.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No, sir. Yes. from the attorney.
So I just like to add a little bit there. One of the things that we thought was really important is distinguishing between industrial hemp products and consumable hemp products. We don't want to put the same restrictions on people that are making T-shirts. And so the creation of that subcategory is just so that we can be very specific throughout the remainder of the code.
With consumable being the key
Right.
in here. Because I've got a great pair of hemp socks at home that I was given by a dealer in Colorado, so someone that worked in the medical marijuana industry.
My recollection on the medical marijuana bill is that we prohibited gummies or anything that looked like candy or anything. So this is almost letting the hemp people circumvent that and do what allegedly would be CBD type products or whatever.
And to be clear, when we're talking about medical marijuana, we're talking about the CBD oil.
Yeah.
I'd have
I
to
might
go back
be
and
wrong.
look.
Just
I'd have to
check.
go back and look, to be
Okay.
honest. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Catherine, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Senator Cowsert, I actually have a bill addressing some of those concerns also. It's just not before the committee today.
I don't know if it's good or bad. I mean, we've got hemp bills now in public safety and health and regulated industries, and it's really hard for the right hand to know what the left hand's doing when they're all firing at us from different angles. I don't know that I want the omnibus type bill we tried to deal with last year that became such a monstrosity it was hard to do it. I agree, maybe bite-sized pieces, but I'd love to know, have a little coordination going on, you know.
So I would be more than happy to provide a summary of the three
Okay.
and how we anticipate they'll work together. And really the intent there was, I looked at what happened last year, and then I felt like the perfect became the enemy of the very good. And so I wanted to make it easier to move forward with things that appeared to be non-controversial, at
Right.
least among the masses. And so that's the intent. But before 4 o'clock, if you'd like for me to have a
That'd
summary
be
of
fantastic.
all three, I can do that.
Thank you so
And
much.
Chairman, if I can, and the problem we had with this, and I had long discussions, sat through a symposium over at Department of Agriculture back during the early fall to discuss all this, and that's always been our concern, that individuals committee shop in some cases through COA, trying to look for the path of least resistance. And so from the very beginning, we wanted it to go through the committee where we felt it should go through, which was regulated industries because of the way it was set up. And so we have consciously tried to avoid some of those end arounds, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, this is good.
That does make sense, and, you know, having some discussions with other people prior to this meeting. In fact, Dr. Gregg, if you remember, just a few minutes ago, brought up a cylinder full of gummies, which just looks like something any kid would want to grab off the counter and down that whole bottle, which is part of our concern here, to say the least. I actually wonder why we would be consuming it at any time, unless somebody just wants to get high, at which point they're going to have too much of it, and we've legalized marijuana, which I never want to do. So, okay, other questions of committee members? Just to follow up, we've got a couple of things we discussed that we'll report back to the full committee. Anybody else who has something else, please grab us before the 4 o'clock hour. We thank you for coming today, and this subcommittee of regular industries is hereby adjourned. Thank you.